In the previous video, which deals with the foundations of harmony and whose link is provided in the description, it was shown that the spectrum of the C4 note produced by a ukulele contains, among its first notes, those corresponding to the major chords of C, F, and G, across the 6th and 8th octaves. These chords, taken together, contain all the notes of the C major scale, and the repetition of the notes C and G. Note that these chords are formed by adding notes at intervals of a third to the notes C, F, and G. This is shown on the screen. Since these chords contain all the notes of the scale, they were sufficient to accompany the melody Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and will be sufficient to accompany any melody that uses only the notes of this scale. Therefore, these chords are considered the fundamental chords of the key of C major and are called primary chords. In this video, we will add notes at intervals of a third to obtain chords on the remaining notes of the scale, thus creating what is called the harmonic field of this key, which will allow us to enrich the harmonization. This screen will show the harmonization process for the C major scale. The counting of third intervals to add the chord notes is done using the hand shown in the upper left corner. The figure that allows you to calculate the critical bandwidth value for a given frequency and the figure that shows the consonants for a fraction x of the critical bandwidth for this frequency are shown in the lower left corner of the screen. These are used to calculate the consonants corresponding to each pair of notes in the generated chords and the average of these consonances, using the procedure described in the video titled Foundations of Harmony, the link to which is provided in the description. C, D, E, E, F, G. The result of harmonizing the C major scale is displayed in the upper right corner of the screen. The notes of the chords corresponding to the harmonization of this scale are shown above the staff. Below the staff are several rows containing information about these chords. The first row classifies the chords by degree and type. The second row shows the name and type of the chords. The third through fifth rows show the notes of these chords. The sixth row shows their consonants. For example, the chord generated for the note C4, the first degree of the scale, is the C major chord and corresponds to the first degree of the C major scale. Its notes are the root C4, the third E4, and the fifth G4. The consonance of this chord is 0.70. As a reminder of the process of calculating the consonants between two notes, we show on the left side of the harmonic field presentation a summary of the sequence of calculations that produces the consonants corresponding to the C major chord. Note that the consonance is calculated for each of the intervals that make up the chord, and the consonance of the chord is the average of these consonances between intervals. The full details of this calculation were given in the video Foundations of Harmony, the link to which is provided in the description. To estimate the critical bandwidth, the linear approximation defined in the description of this video was used for the critical bandwidth curve, identified in this figure as F2-F1. Feel free to use an approximation that you consider more appropriate. The rest of the harmonizing chords of the scale are determined in the same way. Note that harmonizing the scale produces three types of triad chords: 3 major, 3 minor, and 1 diminished. A color scheme is used to group the chords. Green is used for the C major chord built on the first degree, the tonic. Yellow is used to identify the F major chord built on the fourth degree, the subdominant, and red to identify the G major chord built on the fifth degree, the dominant. These are the primary chords. The D minor chord built on the second degree of the scale has two notes in common, F4 and A4, with the F major chord built on the fourth degree of the scale. Note that both chords have the note F, corresponding to the fourth degree of the scale, the subdominant. Therefore, when we study harmonizing melodies, we will see that within the key of C major, which we are working with, both chords fulfill a subdominant function, and that the D minor chord can therefore replace the F major chord when reharmonizing a melody. The E minor chord, built on the third degree of the scale, shares the note C4 and G4 with the C major chord built on the first degree. The A minor chord, built on the sixth degree of the scale, shares the notes C5 and E5, octaves higher than their corresponding C4 and E4 in the C major chord built on the first degree. The note E defines the major nature of these chords, therefore, we will see that within the key of C major, these chords function as tonics, and that the E minor and A minor chords can replace the C major chord when reharmonizing a melody. Finally, the B diminished chord, built on the seventh degree, shares the notes B4 and D5 with the G major chord built on the fifth degree of the scale, the dominant. Both chords contain the leading tone B, therefore, we will see that within the key of C major, both chords function as dominants, and that the B diminished chord can replace the G major chord when reharmonizing a melody. To consolidate these ideas, it is useful to consider the harmonization of the G major scale. This harmonization is carried out in exactly the same way as that used to harmonize the C major scale. G, A, B, B, C, D. The result is shown at the bottom right of the screen. It is important to emphasize the following observations that arise from comparing this harmonization with that of the C major scale. Each note in the scale can be harmonized using one of three chords. All triad chords generated in the harmonization of diatonic scales are consonant. The consonance corresponding to a chord is inherent to it and does not depend on the key in which it is immersed. The chords generated on the first, fourth, and fifth degrees are major and correspond to the primary chords. The rest of the chords are secondary. The minor chord corresponding to the third degree and the minor chord corresponding to the sixth degree contain two notes in common with the major tonic chord corresponding to the first degree, therefore, depending on the melody, they can be used as its replacement. These chords contain the note corresponding to the third degree, which establishes their major nature. The minor chord corresponding to the second degree shares two notes with the primary subdominant chord, therefore, depending on the melody, it can be used as its replacement. These chords contain the note corresponding to the fourth degree, subdominant. The diminished chord corresponding to the seventh degree shares two notes with the primary dominant chord of the fifth degree, therefore, depending on the melody, it can be used as its replacement. These chords contain the note corresponding to the seventh degree, the leading tone. In later videos, we will use the harmonic field diagrams considered in this video to study the functions of chords. You can use the scales with sharps and flats provided in the videos corresponding to the generation of major scales with sharps and flats, whose links are given in the description, to obtain the harmonic fields for the rest of the scales. Next, we will consider the application of the concepts introduced in this study of the harmonization of major scales to the reharmonization of a melody. The harmonization of the melody Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star from the video Foundations of Harmony, linked in the description, has been repeated on the screen. We will play it again so you can compare this harmonization with the one we will play later, in which we will reharmonize the third measure. Therefore, pay close attention to this measure. As we have studied, the F major chord in the third measure can be replaced by the D minor chord, since they have two notes in common and both function as subdominants, leading to the C tonic chord. We will now repeat this original arrangement. Pay close attention to measure 3, because once this playback is complete, we will replace the F major chord with the D minor chord and play this new arrangement so you can compare them. Although the consonance of the chord in the first beat of the third measure has been reduced from 0.88 to 0.73, the result is still pleasant. We have reached the end of this video. We hope it has provided you with a clear preliminary overview of the scale harmonization process and the usefulness of the supplementary chords that this harmonization provides. You should proceed to repeat this entire process for other major keys to solidify the concepts introduced. A complete understanding of the functions of chords requires a more detailed study than that undertaken in this video. We will begin this study after examining the stability of the notes of the different scale degrees within a key, and developing the harmonization of minor scales and harmonization using seventh chords. We hope this video has sparked your enthusiasm to delve deeper into this fascinating area of harmony. Thank you very much for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it and found it useful.